You know, when you hear the word tithing, most of us think of one thing, right? Giving 10%, a simple, straightforward religious duty. But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if the real meaning has nothing to do with money at all and is actually hidden in the ancient language it all came from? Let's dig in and find out.
So, yeah, is that all it is? Is tithing just a rule about our income? Or could it be a metaphor for something much, much bigger? To really get to the bottom of this, we have to go way back to the source. I'm talking about the original Hebrew words themselves. Okay, so our first clue is hiding in plain sight. It's right there in the number at the very heart of the tithe, 10. Now, it seems like just a number, but its original name in Hebrew, well, that opens up a whole new world of meaning. So let's start with the basics. In Hebrew, the word for 10 is Esser. Now, on the surface, okay, it's just a number. But in ancient languages, words are rarely just on their own. They have relatives, and trust me, their family tree tells a really interesting story. And here is where it starts to get really cool. There's a very similar root word, Ashar. It sounds almost identical, but it doesn't mean 10. It means to be rich or to be abundant. And just like that, the number at the core of the tithe is suddenly linguistically tied to the whole idea of wealth and abundance. And this is where it all clicks. The actual Hebrew word for the tithe itself, ma'aser, is built from these two roots. It literally means a tenth part, sure, but it carries this echo, this shadow of that other word, richness. So it's not just any number, it's a rich number. Okay, so let's pause for a sec. The big takeaway here is that the language itself is telling us that this 10th part is all wrapped up in the idea of spiritual richness and fullness. But richness is only one piece of this puzzle. To really see the whole picture, we need to look at another key number.
And that second piece of the puzzle is another hugely important number in Scripture, the number 7. Its symbolism is absolutely essential to figuring out what a perfect tithe is really all about.
So, the Hebrew word for 7 is sheva. And wow, this number is symbolically massive. I mean, just think about the 7 days of creation. It represents a divine cycle, a sense of perfection, wholeness, and just completion.
And just like we saw with 10, the root for 7 branches out in fascinating ways. It's connected to Shabbat, which means to swear an oath or to make a covenant, a sacred binding promise. And it's also linked to Saba, which means to be satisfied or completely full. And boom, you see how it all clicks into place, right? 7 isn't just a number. It's a powerful symbol for spiritual completion, for fulfilling a sacred promise, and for this deep sense of wholeness. So now we've got our two main clues, the spiritual richness of 10 and the spiritual completion of 7. So with these two big ideas floating around in our heads, spiritual richness and spiritual completion, we can finally tackle this central question. What in the world is a perfect tithe? The source material draws a really sharp line in the sand here. On one side, you've got the Pharisees. They were tithing tiny little herbs like mint and dill. It was a super meticulous, legalistic act, all focused on material things. But on the other side, you have Abraham. He gave a tithe to Melchizedek, the king of peace, as this profound spiritual offering, long before any formal law was even written down. And that leads us right to this key verse in the book of Malachi, which calls for a perfect or whole tithe to be brought into the storehouse. Now, given everything we've just uncovered, what could that possibly mean? And here it is. This is the heart of the whole thing. The 10 in tithing points to spiritual richness. The context of perfection brings in 7, which symbolizes completion. So you put them together, and a perfect tithe isn't about your wallet. It's about the offering of your whole, spiritually rich and complete self. So let's just put it out there, plain and simple. According to this interpretation, the perfect tithe has absolutely nothing to do with 10% of your paycheck. It is the act of offering your entire being, a soul that has been totally transformed and made rich with spiritual understanding and truth. This idea goes even deeper with the concept of the first fruit. See, this isn't just an offering you make. It symbolizes a person who has become so fully transformed that they themselves become the offering, the very best of the harvest, reflecting the nature of Christ. In this view, the perfect tithe isn't something you give, it's something you become.
Okay, so if the perfect tithe isn't about money or religious duty, then what's the point? Why does it even matter? Well, looking at it this way reveals a much more profound purpose.
And this totally flips the script, doesn't it? Tithing is no longer some kind of transactional chore you have to perform. Instead, it becomes a transformative process, a spiritual path for returning to a state of being one with the divine. And what's amazing is that this whole idea is anchored right in the very same passage from Malachi, just a few verses before the call for the perfect tithe. The invitation is to return. The offering of the whole self, this perfect tithe, is the answer to the question, how are we supposed to return? And so at the end of the day, we're left with this final thought. If the tithe is truly about offering our whole, complete, and spiritually enriched self, then it's not a question of what's in our bank account, but what's in our soul. And it completely changes the meaning of that simple invitation to return. What that truly means, well, that's something each of us has to discover for ourselves.